Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about sensory language, and you can see from the pictures on this slide that sensory language is language that is also called imagery. It's a type of descriptive writing, and sensory language is descriptive writing that focuses on the five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. So let's look at some examples. I'm going to read two paragraphs that basically describe the same scene. And in the first example, I'm asking this question: why would an author write this? So here's the first example. I could feel the sun baking my face as I ran so fast that my heart was about to pound out of my chest. I could almost taste the bitter gunpowder from the terrifying shots that rang out in the street. Blood littered the street as I continued to run, not even knowing where I was going. Versus this version. I could feel the sun as I ran from the gunshots that were fired in the middle of the street. I didn't know what happened. I just heard shots and then I ran and never looked back. I didn't even know where I was going. Now, if I asked you which of these pictures creates a more vivid picture in your head, I imagine that you would talk about the first example. The first example uses sensory language or imagery. It talks about the sun baking your face, or running so fast that your heart is pounding out of your chest, the bitter taste of gunpowder, the blood that littered in the streets, and the shots ringing out. All of those are sensory details. So, why does a writer use sensory details? Well, the purpose of sensory language or sensory details or imagery, and I use those words because people will call all of these different, use different vocabulary for sensory language, but the purpose is the same. The purpose is to paint a picture in your head to help a reader visualize what's happening, to engage you, to make you want to be a part of the text, and to make the story seem real. So, what I'd like to do next is to go over and look at some words and phrases that appeal to each of your five senses and give you some examples of words or phrases. So, if you're reading or writing, you will notice or try to use words that make the reader see what you're describing. All right. So, a writer is trying to show, not just tell, what something looks like. So, you could write about colors, you could write about sizes, movement, shapes, and appearances. Words such as sunny, rainbow, deformed, flashy, and shiny could be considered sensory words that appeal to your sense of sight. From one of my favorite books, The Watsons Go to Birmingham by Christopher Paul Curtis, I stole these examples. The water was swirling away. A big green turtle about the size of a football. So in the first example, the author, Christopher Paul Curtis, uses a vivid verb, swirling, to show what the water was doing so that the reader could picture it. In the second example, the author uses a comparison. He said that the big green turtle was the size of a football. That helps me picture the turtle better in my head. So let's move on to sound. Sound words are very common. Words that make the reader hear what you're describing instead of just tell what it might sound like are called sensory words. So if you're writing with and want to appeal to a reader's sense of sound, you would talk about the loudness or the quietness or the type of speech a person is using. Any sound word will do. But again, you want to use vivid words and a type of figurative language called onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia is a word that actually mimics a sound. So some examples might be shout, a whisper, a roar, a rattle, and whistle. In The Watsons Go to Birmingham, Christopher Paul Curtis talked about a chair whooshing and used the onomatopoeia doom da doom doom to describe the sound of a record playing. Sensory language includes words and phrases that appeal to a reader's sense of taste. So this makes the reader actually taste what you're describing. So you might use words like sweet or burnt, buttery salty, warm, and tangy. The water seemed like it had metal in it. So it actually creates that sense of that metally taste in your mouth. Or again, Christopher Paul Curtis uses a comparison that the Kool-Aid tasted like grape medicine. All of those help me stay engaged because I can really understand what something tastes like. Words and phrases that appeal to smell. These aren't as common, but these are words that would actually make the reader smell what you're describing. So what does it smell like? Is it musty, fresh, rotten, fragrant, or one of my favorite smells for this time of year, pumpkin-y? So I'm thinking of the moldy smelling bread or football equipment that smelled like sour feet. Ugh. Sensory language would include words and phrases that appeal to the reader's sense of touch or feeling. So these would make the reader feel what you're describing. How does it feel if you were actually there touching it? So examples like wet or fuzzy, warm, or rough or pillowy. In The Watsons Go to Birmingham, Christopher Paul Curtis talked about, I could feel his teeth grinding into my skull. And the cool blue water came all the way up to my arms. So you know it's cool and you know how high it is. It came all the way up to your arms. So boys and girls, over the next couple days, we're going to be asking you to use sensory language to enhance some different sentence starters. Okay? So as you look through the next pages on these slides, you'll be able to choose one tomorrow to practice writing sensory language. Thanks for listening. We'll be in touch. Have a great day.